Well, I think we'll get started now and people can just, tune in as they do. But thank you everyone so much for coming. This is investing in digitally native companies with Atland Ventures. So, yeah, thank you for tuning in, opening your computer, hopefully next year we can do something in person for Twin Cities Startup Week. But for now, this should be great. So, I'll give some background on myself and then Atland and kind of explain what we'll be talking about in this panel. And then, of course, hand it over to the lovely panelists. So my name is Savannah. I'm a current junior at the University of Minnesota, and I'm studying marketing and econ. I've been in Atland for just under 2 years, and I'm the current VP of platform. So that means doing things like this. So making sure that we have a presence in the community and are supporting not only the community, but the companies that we are investing in. So just a lot of event planning, even internal like team bonding planning as well to make sure the fund culture is doing good. And then I would say for a fun fact, because I'm going to have everyone say a fun fact, when I was younger, I thought I'd be one of three things when I grew up: an archaeologist, a professor, or a ninja. And I guess like I have a black sash in Kung Fu, so maybe that counts for something, but yeah. And then in terms of Atland, so we are a student-run, student-owned venture capital firm at the University of Minnesota, but we are not affiliated with the U. So that means that all of the general partners are students, but we get to make our own investment decisions and have the final say, which is very unique to us. We invest in early stage companies, very industry agnostic, geographically agnostic, and the thesis, like our thesis, really revolves around investing in companies that are solving problems felt by the digitally native generation. So that's kind of tying directly to the name of the panel. And for now, that's Gen Z, but we'll be touching more on how that's going to evolve and adapt with each generation. In terms of digitally native, that's, kind of a buzzword. So if you're looking at the definition of it, it's just any business that originated online. But as we will discover with all of these panelists, it really ties back to the fact that it means something to different people. It means something different to everyone. And then in terms of just like, if you have any questions about Atland, questions in general, feel free to throw those in the chat. We have our managing partners, Alva and Sophia, manning that, so they will answer them as they can. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end for Q&A if you have any questions directed directly to any of the panelists. So with that, I'll hand it over to Emma to introduce herself.
Thanks for the intro. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Schutz, and I'm currently a finance major here at the U, studying strategic management as well as a minor. I'm going into my I am in my junior year now. And I joined Atland last fall, and I am an analyst, and I'm also on the platform team. So whatever Savannah needs, I try and help with. And then fun fact about me is earlier this week, I actually had surgery, so now I can burp. I never was able to until now. So fun fact about me.
That is the best fun fact ever. And hello, everyone. And thanks, Savannah, for putting this together. My name is Harrison, and I'm a current senior here at the U studying marketing and computer science. I'm a director in Atland and have been in the fund for a little bit over 2 years. And my fun fact, which is a little bit more boring, but that is that my entire family is named after the Beatles.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aditya. I am also a senior like Harrison. I'm studying computer engineering, and I've also been a part of the fund for about 2.5 years. Currently a director. And my fun fact is I play the alto saxophone. So if there's any musical people, maybe we can jam together sometime. But yeah, that's what I love doing.
Hi everyone, I'm Rafa. I'm currently a junior at the U. I'm majoring in computer science. I just joined Atland last spring as an analyst. And a fun fact about me is that I run a film blog on Instagram called Filmlogical, if you want to follow.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick Hartle. I'm a current sophomore at the U studying finance, and I'm a director at Atland. I've been at Atland for about a year now, And my fun fact is that I have an intolerance to cilantro.
Wow, such fun facts. Thank you all so much for being here. Excited to chat with you more about all of your different perspectives. Welcome to anyone who's joined in the last few minutes. We just gave some intros and thank you for being here. So for the first question, directly relating to the name of the panel, in terms of investing in digitally native companies, what does that mean to you? And if you just explain kind of your reasoning behind that, that would be great.
I can start it off. What it means kind of to me is kind of the newest and upcoming topics that are sparking innovation, interest, change, and things that will overall improve quality of life. I think as young people investing in these companies, there's always something new. And they're kind of rewriting the rules of these products as well as being super disruptive, cutting edge, ever changing, things like that. And then also just being able to break these barriers down and get access to information and resources we never had before. That's kind of what the digitally native kind of means to me.
Love it. I can go next. And as Savannah, you said, I mean, nowadays, pretty much every single company is quote unquote digitally native in some way. But in my mind, I think when investing, when I think of digitally native, it's not just the companies who are online to be online or using technology to use technology. I think it's the companies who at their core use kind of tech to solve a problem better than anyone else. And I think the ones that I'm specifically attracted to are the ones that are kind of going against some sort of legacy or existing system that everyone kind of has just accepted as the best solution or only option. And in some ways, I think these are the founders that are kind of able to see a problem where others don't. And these are the companies that when you talk to them, you kind of get that light bulb moment of like, OMG, wait, why has this always been done like this? It literally does not make sense. And then I think two examples in our portfolio that kind of gave me this moment would be Cohort and Transcripts. For the interest of time, I'll just quickly talk about Cohort. Cohort's in art discovery marketplace and really made me kind of take a step back and think, wow, the art world literally does not make sense. And traditionally, kind of on one side, you have galleries who control distribution, which are basically impossible for artists to get into, kind of take huge commissions from artists and completely limit the artist's kind of target market to certain communities and geographical regions. Then on the other side of the marketplace, you have consumers where there's this kind of like accepted sentiment across society that only a certain group of very wealthy, older, kind of more intelligent individuals understand art and can be a part of that community. And so kind of with this, Kendall and Shaveen, we're really trying to build a place that opened up the art world with more opportunity for artists to grow and build a community. And then on the other side, made a place where everyone, including like people like myself, kind of could be a part of the art community and enjoy it and kind of become their own collector.
Harrison brought up a really great example. And if it's something that anyone's curious in, you can always check it out on our portfolios on our website. But really to add on to that, so I'm going to take Cohort as an example here again. Something that like really made them attractive for us is market signals and their traction. So when we looked at them as an investment and we as a team sort of kind of got together and said, what is this company really doing from like a digitally native point of view? We saw that they had a platform, they had like an iOS app, and they had a ton of, just basically people from their target market already using their app. And that's already like a great sign from us, especially from a venture capital perspective. And in general, when we look at digitally native companies, we're really looking at companies that are solving something that's painful, right? Because it's easy to be like, I want to create a business in something, but what we're really trying to look at is a company that's solving something painful. And if they're doing it in a more radical way, you generally see a lot of people kind of being attracted to it really early on. And that's something that's really great to see. And traction and market signals in general are just positive aspects of digitally native companies. At least that's what it means to me. So yeah, that's what I would say.
When I think about investing in digitally native companies, I kind of just think about how fast technology is changing everything today. It's impacting just about every single industry out there. And so to me, like investing in them means recognizing the potential that the technology offers. And it's not really limited to companies that are or were born fully digital, but also how existing or traditional companies are adapting to these changes so they can remain competitive. And I think companies that can quickly adjust to changing market conditions, like Aditya was talking about, and meet the evolving needs of consumers today, they have a real advantage. So it's all about being flexible, which is really important in today's landscape.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what Rafa said, I think digital native companies to me are companies that are quickly expanding and growing. I think because the world is getting to a place where we have enough global reach and almost like a global renaissance of technology, a lot of these consumer apps can reach D2C and low operational costs and reach a huge global consumer base. Additionally, I think it puts a lot of emphasis on consumer-centric approaches to companies because we have all this data that we can optimize. And then finally, data utilization too is also streamlined, so it produces a lot of growth potential for these companies.
That's so awesome. Thank you guys. And some of you hinted at it a little bit, but next I just want to dive a little bit into what everyone's favorite industry is that's up and coming and why. So let's just start with Emma again.
Yeah. So first is I have two kind of on my list. So as a finance major, definitely fintech. I love looking into the financial services space. I'm currently working on a project for consulting on the financial services space. An example kind of that I've been looking at is Elvest, and it's specifically a platform for building females' financial wealth. And so I think that's something that I'm super passionate about because there is such a huge gap between men and women in this space. And so being able to find platforms like this is super impactful to me. And then also climate tech. I was just looking at a company actually called Space Forge, and I think what they're doing is super cool. They're using like their digital satellite in order to be able to manufacture these specific materials that they couldn't do on Earth. So being able to manufacture materials using like space and different like gravity and stuff. I don't know exactly all the mechanics of it, but things like that kind of just goes to show how innovative that these digitally native companies really are. So those are a couple for me.
Sweet. Also a big clean tech fan here. Another industry too that I'm really interested in is healthcare. And I think one of the reasons is I've kind of realized how broken the US system is. We spend almost like 20% of our GDP, I think, on healthcare, and the value we get from that spend really isn't matching up. And honestly, kind of like as I get older and have to start figuring out a lot of these healthcare issues myself, I've started to feel like this system here in the US just really does not make any sense. And so I just think there's kind of a lot of opportunity in the space to build a better, more effective and kind of simple system for everyone. A couple specific areas, I think insurance has a lot of chance for growth. Personal health records, I think to me, it's very weird that like we barely have access to our own medical information. It's all kind of distributed in different places. Also, something I think is pretty fascinating is how we can start using AI to deliver better care. Yesterday, me and a couple other people, we talked to a company called Pharmasol, which was kind of implementing conversational AI to help answer different patient questions with pharmacies and alleviate a lot of the work of pharmacists. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of different opportunities inside the healthcare space to build a better world for everyone.
I also have two industries as well that like I'd consider my favorite. One of them is definitely more agriculture. So the interesting thing is agriculture necessarily isn't digitally native, but ag tech is, and that is sort of like the industry that I'm starting to see a lot more development when it comes to platforms and things like that that farmers can use online to sort of connect their farms and sort of be present on the farm or somewhere else where they actually wouldn't have to drive out there. If you go to a lot of states, farms are just miles and miles. It's not easy to monitor all that just doing it in person. But then another space that is really, really interesting these days is generative AI. And there's a lot of really great AI writing tools that just haven't been present in the past. One of them that's really interesting that's kind of up and coming now, it's digitally native, is Jasper. So they basically create on-brand AI content based on some inputs you give it. So essentially you can just set up your marketing plans and things like that within just a few main kind of SKUs that you're interested in exploring. And that's just like the start of where this technology can really go.
So my favorite up and coming industry at the moment is climate tech, but more specifically how AI can be utilized within it. I was looking at a startup called Motor.io, and they're using AI to kind of streamline carbon reduction planning. And they're able to do that for thousands of buildings in real time and automate audits. And it's just making their processes a lot more efficient. I think there's also lots of economic opportunities. So even companies that aren't specifically focused on climate tech or developing it, they can also incorporate ESG tech into their work. And a lot of people refer to these companies as being like sustainably native. And it just shows that they're genuinely committed to ESG goals right from the start. And from an investor perspective, this kind of dedication to sustainability helps increase trust. And I see it as a way to work to a better future for our planet while also aligning profit with like a greater purpose.
As a finance major, like Emma said, I'm really fascinated with the DeFi and fintech space. I think the coolest part about these spaces is the accessibility for consumers and the growth of underbanked populations with people who can't or don't have enough equity to get into some niche, high-level, high-barrier entries. Additionally, I think streamlining such a black and white industry to make it exciting and easy to monitor and use because of robo-advisors and advanced AI analytics is really kind of cool and a staple for this industry that I'm seeing flow into others. And additionally, tokenization and fractional ownership and very niche high barrier industries like art and real estate to increase liquidity in these sectors and then also increase secondary wealth for other investors, as well as like the transparency and security of developing blockchain networks, I think is a really cool area to get into in this space.
Those are all super, super interesting industries. So let's get into maybe a digitally native company that means something to you based on those industries. Nick, if you want to start it off, just because you ended the industries, maybe talk about one of a company that means something to you.
Yeah, I'd love to. So actually, Atland's one of our most recent portfolio companies. FranShares, I think, is a really cool company in the fintech space that emphasizes fractional shares. This one specifically being in franchises, where customers and underbanked people, unaccredited investors can invest into franchises that are their favorite or most popular that they think are going to be on the come up, giving passive income to them and sustainable growth.
Super cool. And I know, Emma, you also mentioned fintech. If you wanted to talk about any of the companies that stood out to you and you view as digitally native, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I previously talked about Ellevest a little bit in the female building wealth in that sense. And then also I was also looking at a few other ones, but mainly Ellevest is the one that I have been looking at currently.
Okay, awesome. And then in terms of climate tech, I know, Emma, you were also interested in this, but Rafa, you were talking about ESG and just climate tech in general and more on the sustainably native side. Are there any companies that mean something to you in that industry? I know you touched on one, but
one that I really like is a startup called Orbital Sidekick. So they're doing some really impressive work. They're using AI and satellite imagery tech to gather a ton of data and insights that help them monitor changes kind of all over the world and in a lot of industries, but specifically like within agriculture, they're employing algorithms that can help assess crop health, detect diseases in crops, and a lot more. So just like helping ensure that there's food on our plates while also like making efficient use of resources. And they can also help organizations and farmers and a lot more make informed decisions. So I'm really impressed with what they're doing.
Yeah, it sounds like a super cool company. And similar to kind of in the sustainability area of things, Aditya, you talked about ag tech, you talked about AI. What's a company that stood out or that stands out to you?
Yeah, so there's actually a really interesting company in Germany that's actually a startup, and they're called Hexafarms. Essentially, they're working on AI-driven urban food production because in England and sort of in Europe in general, that's where a lot of greenhouses are. You hear about Dutch greenhouses because they produce a ton of food there in greenhouses, even though, you know, the weather and stuff there is definitely a little bit more cooler. So Hexa Farms is essentially digitally native, actually, in the sense that they're really trying to create a platform that's completely online and that connects with sensors that are already existing to route data to their platform. And you can essentially not just get the data, but also get insight from the data. Because one thing you hear often is data fatigue in agriculture because there's so much data coming in. Hexa Farms is aiming to solve that using artificial intelligence. And I think that's what's really cool about them.
Yes, AI. And last but not least, Harrison, if you wanted to touch on just anything in digital health and companies in that sector, that'd be great.
I'll cheat a little bit. I don't know if people necessarily consider this healthcare, but I think I kind of do. But the first company that kind of comes to mind with this, simply because I had to go there last week, would be Warby Parker. I know this company has talked about a lot, so try not to go on and on about this. But I just think Warby Parker is pretty cool because traditionally when people kind of thought of ordering things like eyeglasses, there was kind of this model and agreed upon notion of how you could do that. And the idea of ordering glasses online was like not even a question. But Warby Parker kind of figured that out. And in fact, it was technology that had enabled them to do it better than anybody else and deliver glasses that were affordable, accessible, and stylish. And so I've been a big Warby fan for a while now and have ordered a couple of different pairs of glasses from them, both online using their kind of VR and at-home try-on kits, and then also in store. And really just the brand, just the ability for the brand to turn something like going to the eye doctor, which you kind of don't really like to do and it kind of sucks, into something that's really fun and you really enjoy, I think is really cool. But I bring it up because last week I was having a ton of eye issues. I like basically was having trouble seeing, and without like a second of thought, I immediately knew where I was going to go, and that was Warby Parker, because I knew they had kind of started offering actual like eye exams. And I kind of thought about this and I realized I immediately thought of them just because I think they've built up so much trust with me as a customer. And also I have so much trust in their kind of digital competencies, and kind of I know that they're going to make the experience so much more easy and enjoyable for me as a consumer. But I also think the company kind of just points to, in the healthcare space, the importance of like really valuing user experience. So yeah, that's kind of a company that means a lot to me. It's Warby.
Wow, that was a nice little pitch for them, Harrison.
Yeah, free marketing.
For sure. All right, on to my favorite question. So this is kind of really coming down to everyone's perspectives and where they come from, what experiences they have that really influence their decisions, and when they're doing diligence, when they're presenting investments, and how they really take a look at companies. So we're gonna be talking about that lens. So my question to you guys is, how does your unique perspective play a role in how you look at companies?
I can start off. So for me, I think my background is a lot of volunteering, and I do a lot of nonprofit work just around the Twin Cities and for a lot of different organizations. And so when I look into companies, I think that technology is, ever changing, and it's inevitable. It's going to happen no matter what. But I want to look at companies in a lens that is doing good and that we're solving a real problem, and making sure that we're responsible with our investments, and making sure that it's not always just about the money. Yes, it's about making money in business. However, we need to make sure that we're doing good things, solving good problems, and making sure we're doing it for the people. So that's kind of my take on that.
Love that answer. A couple things I would add too is, throughout college, I've kind of gotten to do a couple different internships, whether that be in like the healthcare industry or in marketing tech. I think these kind of opportunities have just opened my eyes a little bit into how these different industries work, and then kind of what problems exist inside these industries that you can kind of look for in startups. Something else I'd mention is just also, my parents are both small business owners. And so kind of throughout my whole life, I've always kind of been the one to help them navigate new technologies and set that up. And so kind of just understanding the types of problems they face and the tech they've used in the past to solve it. I think this is kind of like a small, I don't know, it's not really considered an industry, but that's something I always look for when looking at different investments. And then lastly, I think this goes for all of us, but I view myself very much as a learner. definitely not an expert at anything as a college student, but just very much using this as a chance to kind of be very open and learn, especially from these amazing founders that we get to have the chance to meet with, and just kind of always keeping an open mind. So yeah.
Speaking of learning and internships and keeping an open mind, I have to echo Harrison's thoughts about how internships have been very influential as a college student. My perspective has definitely been, I just love companies in general that are doing something physical a lot of times. And even though those companies aren't always the easiest to scale, I did an internship 2 years ago now with a drone company, essentially that are working on building hardware from the ground up to help detect drones to keep them away from like high, security places and things like that. But what really struck me as interesting in that is because a lot of times when you look at just software companies, it's usually pretty replicable if it's a larger company that's coming in and building a new software company. But if you're talking about hardware, there's always some sort of passion or some sort of niche that comes in. And it's really interesting seeing that from a startup perspective, because the founders have like the drive to really work with their hands and build something new from the ground up. So I really love seeing that. And I've actually learned a lot from speaking with founders who are building like Internet of Things devices, smart home devices, agriculture. You just learn so much from the founders you speak with, and that's actually been really influential in how I look at companies in the future.
So my background is a bit of a blend. I'm a computer science major, but I'm also minoring in film. It's a bit of an unusual combination, but it works for me because along with my interest in tech, I'm really into storytelling. It's really important to me in whatever shape or form. So when I'm looking at companies, I tend to zero in on the founders' stories and kind of like the how and why of why they started their venture, and it kind of gives me a better sense of what their company stands for and their values and their vision. And then with storytelling, there's also kind of like the flip side, which centers on the audience, or in this context, the customer. So the connection between the customer and the company is really important. So when I look at businesses, it's that blend of technology and storytelling that kind of guides my thinking.
I'd say in terms of my experience, I've had an internship that was based off corporate venture in food tech and ag tech. Being in the breadbasket of America, I think it's important to be specialized in such a dominant industry in our backyard. It's given me an interesting perspective on how to evaluate companies, in the weeds of food and CPG. But I think being young in that space is also very interesting because it's very old dominated. It allows me to have more of a creative scope on types of companies that they look at in terms of being digitally native or how they're developing. But I love bringing this energy to a space like VC, and where finance can be so cut and dry. It's great to be in such a fun, lively community.
Yeah, that's all amazing to hear. Super cool to get a better look into everyone's perspectives. I know I love seeing how people's background influence their decisions today, investing, business or not related. And I mean, as you can see, the fund is really made up of a ton of diverse people. If I took like any 5 random people from Atland, this panel would be just as lovely. So it's been super great. And I guess we'll go to the next question. I think we'll have some time for Q&A, so that is awesome. So yeah, how would you say Atland's thesis statement like adapts and evolves with each generation? This is something that I was talking about at the beginning. So if you missed it, basically Atland invests in companies that are solving problems felt by the digitally native generation. And for us right now, that's Gen Z. But if you guys want to dive into how that can grow and change with each generation, that'd be amazing.
I can start off. I think that technology is kind of ever changing, as I said before. And I kind of think that as we move forward, we need to adopt new thinking and new ways to look at our thesis, because we're not going to be Gen Z forever, or well, we are, but it's not going to be focused on Gen Z forever, if that makes sense. And so continuing to find new, young, bright minds and being able to take in their perspectives as well, I think is super important because we are the future, but they are the future as well. And so being able to take in new perspective and continually, adapting to new cultures, new ideas. I think that's what makes this fund so great, as you mentioned before, is that everyone comes from such a different background. So being able to take those new perspectives and bring them into account as we invest.
Fully agree. Like you said, Emma, obviously we kind of get older, but the members of the fund are going to stay the same age. And I think the things that are kind of exciting to us right now in the fund will be very different from the things that excite the future fund members. And again, I don't really know if our thesis, like if saying Gen Z is the right word, I don't know what the right word would be. But I definitely think there's kind of an advantage to always having young people making the investments. I think this is like, it's always a group of people who are kind of coming into adulthood and trying to figure out the world for the first time. And they kind of have this special grip on what kind of problems are important to the next generation and what they really care about. And then also, as I talked about before, I think kind of always having it be college students, I think there's just this kind of open-mindedness with that group of people and kind of willingness to learn that I think also sets it apart.
Something else you realize as well is that, we're all getting older, but the thing is the fund will always stay young. So they'll always have that unique perspective of college students coming in with sort of a fresh mind and sort of open-minded values. And you kind of, you see that in our portfolio too, when we're looking at companies that are doing equitable based investing, solving problems related to climate change. These are all like very much Gen Z based problems. And, in the future, the fund, who the students that are in it, they're going to represent the generation's next problems. And the companies that are coming in our portfolio is going to reflect that. So what really stays the same is that the fund is young and they're bright, they're open-minded, and the problems that are being solved in that generation are going to be reflected in our portfolio as well.
Yeah, so like our generation, we're really known for really quickly shifting preferences and trends, and what might have been popular a few years ago or even a few weeks ago might not be anymore. And even the tools that we're using, like certain technologies, they're always also changing and evolving. And I think that's where Atland's approach kind of comes into play, because I don't think our thesis statement is like a one size fits all thing. I think it also adapts and evolves with each passing generation. So
yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I think the really special part about our thesis and our fund body is that everyone right now, everyone before us, has always had a sparkle in their eye in terms of investing in venture capital. I think the beauty of the fund and how it's going to transition into the next generations, like everyone said, is motivated people who are working proactively to prevent these things that are coming, with a sparkle in their eye and excitement in the venture community. I think is the beauty of the machine that keeps it well greased. So really excited to see how our thesis change and embracing the change that comes with it.
Yeah, 100%. That's all very much embodies, I think, what we all view our thesis to being, what we keep in mind as we're building our portfolio companies. So I think we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. I will kick it off while people start thinking of questions they may want to ask the panelists. You can ask about Atland, about venture capital in general. You can ask specific people things, so feel free to just raise your hand and then I'll call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask the question. But one thing I was thinking of throughout this panel is we should talk more about maybe what Atland is actually doing for these companies that fit our thesis. So if anyone wants to jump in and talk about how Atland's providing value for our portfolio companies and continues to provide that value post-investment.
I can give one example really quick, just from a personal point of view. I talked about Cohort earlier. I actually got the chance to work with that company for a while my sophomore year as an intern. So that was definitely a really awesome experience. And I think for me, it was kind of awkward being a venture capital investor without the chance of working at a startup. So I think it was kind of a mutually beneficial relationship where I was able to kind of provide a younger voice and a different type of perspective while also I kind of gained experience seeing what actually working at a startup is like. And that I think in turn did make me a better investor. That's just one example.
I think some of the examples are kind of small too. I remember for Avalis when we passed that company, we all like wore like their merch in, and I think that there's a lot of promotional efforts that went into that, as well as I know like some students were at the state fair for that and being able to gather data for them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's someone on the panel. And then also just like different, I think being able to connect founders with different people at the U. So a lot of experts who are there. I know CFANS is huge. My team, particularly this last spring, was really into ag tech. So we definitely connected with professors a lot, and we're able to connect professors with different founders. So I think that's one of our value adds.
Yeah, for sure. I remember it was Harrison, me, and some other people, and we just walked around and asked people to download the app in exchange for a free corn ticket, like corn on the cob. So
That's
it's a
200
little
down.
cheeky way. Yeah, honestly, 200 downloads. If anyone else on the panel has anything else to add, go for it. Otherwise, anyone in the audience, feel free to start asking questions if you have any.
Savannah, one more thing to add that actually I think
Yeah.
you did that I heard of. But I also think kind of market research and just like being in touch with kind of like a younger audience is also something that we can add. I heard that I think like didn't end up investing in the company, but I know one time while doing primary research, you gathered like a survey with 200 different students and ended up giving that to the founder. And although they didn't become a portfolio company, I think that still added a ton of value. I don't know if you want to give more detail there, but that's something I know that we can also do.
Yeah, I think that's a super important thing to note that, I mean, even if we don't invest in a company, we have taken a couple calls with the founders and they've given their time to us. And so the least we can do is help them in any way we can. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're just supporting entrepreneurship. So in terms of that example, yeah, just throughout the process of doing diligence, it's super easy having access to this group of their target market, because if we are investing in a company, we are always going to be their target market based on our thesis. And so just putting it out there throughout the whole diligence process and giving them room to ask us things. So ask us to send out surveys. We have access to, like, I forgot who mentioned it, but the university resources of like labs, research, that type of thing. And so, yeah, I just like sent out a survey to a bunch of people, and I didn't know they got 200 responses, but that's sick.
Yeah, I'll actually add something else that I just thought of too, that the students within the fund are also, very, very talented, curious students that enjoy working on projects like these. And there was another example of a company that, my team looked at this past spring, that, even though we didn't really move forward with investing with them, they were working on some more of an engineering based problem. They're trying to build like sensors for like their container farms. And I was working on a similar side project because I was super curious about that space. So I said, hey, if you're interested, we can talk more about this. Sort of as an aside, and they're really interested and they wanted to try out a few prototypes. So that was also a really low cost way for them to try out some new, technologies that they could like build off of for their own, sort of engineering and things like that. So I just want to say that too, like a lot of students in our fund are also working on really cool things. And that is an advantage for other startups to kind of come in and, have internships and just bounce ideas off of each other.
Yeah, student talent's definitely a big one. And yeah, I know a lot of the audience are fund members. Thank you for the support. But if anyone has any specific questions like I posed earlier, feel free. You can also throw them in the chat too if you don't have audio capabilities.
What would you guys say is one of the most valuable things so far in your career that you've gotten out of Atland? And how do you think Atland can be used as a resource post-graduation with the lessons you've learned in the fund?
I can go first quick because I already kind of talked about this. I think I think the internship experience I got working at Cohort in product definitely was kind of a jumping off point for future internships I've had and different experiences. So that was definitely amazing. I definitely would not have had that connection if I didn't work in Atland. But number two would just be the people. I think it's like the most amazing small group of people I've ever been around in my life. I remember he's like graduated now, but Jags, I he's so willing to give me kind of any advice and give me as much time as possible, like whether that be reviewing my resume or telling me like maybe what I should be like considering for a career. So I definitely just say like the experiences you get, yes, but also mainly just the people.
I'd have to echo that. Definitely the people. I think Carlson in general is very competitive. And I would say, like, as a group of people, we are competitive, but we're competitive in the sense that we lift each other up through that competitiveness. And so I think coming into the fund, it really just amplified that for me. And seeing all these people doing these cool things kind of gives you motivation to move forward and kind of kickstart and get going and learning. And I would say, like, I learned probably the most I've ever learned in Atland compared to any other class, any other thing in at the U, or even, in my previous time in school. So I think for sure it's like that competitive aspect, but in a great way.
I
Yeah,
really want to emphasize something that Harrison said really quick about networks, because that is such a big advantage with Atland Ventures that I sometimes think that even us as fund members sometimes sort of miss, when we go to events and things like that and speak to a lot of great startup founders just in the Midwest area. These are some really awesome opportunities to connect with founders who might be passionate about similar things and sort of go forward with ideas that we're passionate about. And a lot of like the internships and things and sort of full-time opportunities students have done post Atland have actually been through these sort of connections. So we've had students go and work at actual VC firms because of the people they met through Atland, or go work at accelerators like Techstars because they knew, people who worked at Techstars, reached out to them through that Atland connection, facilitate a conversation and sort of go forward with that. Because as an Atland Ventures fund member, you have experience that a lot of students might not necessarily have, especially for students who are interested in VC, because you already kind of got a head start there. So I really want to say that that's like so big.
yeah, I think you all have great points. Just a small thing to add. I think as a CS major, most of the work I've done and my past internship experience is really technical. And I think being in Atlan and getting to talk to founders gave me a broader perspective of what it means to create a product and like think about the customers and the stakeholders and all that goes into that. And not just like the technical aspect of it. So
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely just echo all of that. And then it looks like we have a question in the chat from Shrenik. What do VCs or Atland specifically look for in the founding team? Great question.
I can take this one first. I think looking into a company specifically and their founding team, some green flags that I like to advocate for is if a founder is running lean. I think that's a really special testament that a lot of founders don't realize is special for VC investments, is if they're able to bootstrap their company and do whatever it takes to get the job done. I think that's something you don't really see in kind of the grandiose culture of startups, especially like what you see in Silicon Valley with crazy high valuations and taking in a lot of capital. You don't see a lot of these nitty gritty founders that are working in the garage. And I don't know, I think corporations like Apple, Google, that are all out of a garage, they have the same mentality of being hungry and wanting it enough. So
I kind of echo that. And then also, like, on top of that passion, I think that found like something I look for specifically is that they've had experience with this problem. A lot of times people will build companies, but they don't have the particular knowledge of past experiences with it. So I think having that past experience, not only as like maybe a founder, but also with that specific problem that they're solving, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think those are great answers. I guess for me, like very high level, I guess it's kind of like three things: the ability to build a good product and kind of understand your customer, the ability to fundraise, and then the ability to build a great team. And a lot of that, like building a team, I think you can just kind of tell based on how the founder communicates with you and the compassion they show, and how, yeah. So those are like very high level, like the three things that I kind of like always look for.
Yeah, one more thing to add on to that is also something that's obvious in a sense, but we sometimes may overlook it, is the fact that there's previous, history of success. Like if it's a founding team that previously started a company and raised money and got it acquired and now they're working on a new project, that's like a dark green flag. That's so big because basically we already have confidence that they know what they're doing a little bit more, compared to maybe a founder who's just starting off and building a new company. So I definitely think when we see a company like that, what we often see is the rounds get filled very, very quickly because a lot of other VCs also know that.
Yeah, I think founding team for everyone in Atland is super important. And it's sometimes kind of hard because when you're on these founder calls, if you just like the person or you have a good judge of their character, it's hard to look into all the other things that are still important to a founding team of a startup and kind of almost predicting success or like mitigating risk, especially because we're early stage. So yeah, it's definitely just one of the challenges. And yeah, Rafa, did you have anything to add? Otherwise, anyone else can jump in. Kind of like covered all the bases. A couple other things we look for in companies too are the market, or just like the industry in general. If that market's doing well, if it's on a decline, and then also just like the idea itself. And I think Rafa mentioned this earlier, but we look at vitamin versus painkiller, which is super important. Is it actually solving this huge need, or is it kind of just a want or a nice to have? But if no one else has any questions, I'm just going to do like a few little announcements. But if you have any further questions about Atland itself, about our processes, anything like that, go ahead and just direct it to atlandventures@gmail.com.